Okay, so I have a little assignment for you, and we get back to this being present, and we get also to the reasoning of all this later in the talk. But I really appreciate, it would be great if you dare to take your notebook and your colors and start sketching while I'm talking. And the reason for this is that there's plenty of research demonstrating that the most efficient way of taking notes is with a pen and paper, and not only writing down things, but also drawing. So whenever you find out something interesting, make a little sketch next to that, maybe a keyword, meditation, and then something drawing in there also, handwriting down things. Why I'm asking you to do this is that I think you will get most out of this an hour and a half if you activate your brain through drawing and through writing down. And as I say, that there's plenty of research showing that taking notes with pen and paper is better than by typing them with the computer. Funny enough, there's also research showing that with the pen and paper, it's better than with the tablet. So even with the tablet, with the capacity of drawing, it seems to be that the paper works better. I don't have any idea, or nobody really knows why is that. What is the connection between the mind and the hand? My hypothesis is that it relates to this, our embodiment. We are not only mind, we are with our nervous system, we are processing information in the entire body. The movement of your hand and your thinking works together to make it more efficient. So, is there anyone who knows where a lecture comes from? The idea of lecturing, föreläsning på svenska. The Swedish term föreläsning gives you a hint. Where comes this tradition that there's a professor or teacher giving a lecture? That goes back to all the way to the Middle Ages. This goes back to the very early days of the human history. Of course, it depends on the scale you have. There were humans before the antique as well, and they did amazing things. And of course, this is now content warning. This is very Eurocentric approach, and the reason for that it's Eurocentric is just my personal limitation, that I'm educated in Anglo-American tradition, and we ignore other approaches, unfortunately. I may even claim that the process or the reason of lecturing being pretty much the same in different civilizations around the world. So, the European tradition. Socrates, everybody remember, philosopher, he didn't wrote down anything. Actually, another example from the Asia is Buddha, who didn't write down anything either. But both of them were having students. Socrates, of course, Plato, who was his star student. So Plato thought that what Socrates is saying is so valuable that I want to write them down. So he started to write down the dialogues with Socrates, and suddenly there were these texts written down with deep thoughts. Then those texts, especially Aristoteles, got almost like a canon in the Christianity. And of course, there was the Bible, which was written down and translated to several languages, but they were all handwritten manuscripts. So you may understand that for obvious reasons they were super expensive. Handwritten, huge manuscripts of books, Bible, Aristotle's works, also the Socrates, Plato, all the Greek writings and the Roman writings. And as they were really expensive, and now we come to the economics, it was worth of copying them. And how that process was operationalized or made in practice was in the monasteries, where there was the priest who was reading the manuscript, and the students' job, the monks' job, was to copy word by word what the priest was saying. So if my words would be so valuable, not to say that there's any great wisdom in them, but if we consider that my words, or I would be reading some great book which I only within my power position would have access, we could now in the next hour with you 45 people in there get 45 copies of super expensive manuscript, or maybe 2 pages of that or something like that. And then we would continue tomorrow, maybe praying between a bit. So this took along in Europe for what it says in there, from 2500 to the 1500 for about 1,000 years. And slowly the libraries of the monasteries were growing with the copies, but still very few copies. So when there was new monasteries, they were copying again those books. But as it took like probably half a page per day, when the lecturing, the föreläsning happened, someone reading in the front of the students, it took very long, and still the books were super expensive. So then what happened in the 14th century was the great invention, we could say the movable type by Gutenberg, which changed a lot of things. That I know that the Chinese invented the movable type printing press before Gutenberg, but I don't know that history so well. Anyhow, now there was the possibility of copying by printing, so make exact copies of the super valuable books. Still they were quite valuable, and only very wealthy people were having access to those and so on. But that was a big jump in the certain collective human mind. So if the Socrates or Jesus or Buddha were teachers who were having dialogue with their students, and the students were taking notes what he was writing, more probably like you are taking notes now, I guess. So a bit of keywords in here and there, and then they wrote down, including their own words, to make the Bible and the texts which are claimed to be the dialogues of Socrates, written by Plato and several other students of Socrates. And similar way, the spoken words of Buddha were written down like 100, 200 years after he lived. So a lot of cultural layers in there too, but still like a written form of wise words. And then things changed a lot after the printing press. Well, Gerhard Fischer, who is a scholar in Colorado University in the United States, been saying that he claims that there's this attempt to increase the power of certain collective human mind, or you can see certain technologies coming up. One could say that there's a bit techno-determinist way of thinking, that the technology comes and then world changes. One could also say that the world changes to develop the technology for those needs. One way or another, hard to say which direction the causality goes. Anyhow, if we look the history, we can find certain moments when technology and power of certain collective human mind has changed. Then the personal computer, of course, made it even the classical desktop publishing, which was the Apple's big marketing idea that anybody may start to do books and magazines. Then the early 1990s with the World Wide Web, the internet, and then certain changes in the internet time, social media, certain cultures of participation. And again, I want to emphasize that these changes, like which comes after each other, is hard to locate. If you think the whole, like a political, societal discussion emphasizing participation of the citizens to every decision making, you could track it back that it is because of the internet or social media or other way around. So when we emphasize the people's right to be heard, it might be that it's cause of the social media, that it's so easy to raise your voice today, or it might be other way around, that is a certain political development which been then inventing the social media. Either or, anyway. And then currently, if we think what is the big question of technology is, of course, the AI, the artificial intelligence, and how that may change our perspective and our ability to increase the certain cultural knowledge or collective human mind aided by technology. So I'm progressing very slow, but I hope it doesn't bother you. Keep on drawing and writing down your thoughts and ideas. So like Pirjo said, that my own research is more or less about, I hate the word educational technology, but let's call it that because I'm in the School of Art, Design and Architecture and in the Department of Art and Media. My approach to the technology is more that it's a medium. Nevertheless, I don't emphasize the technology when I talk about my own work. However, this is an interesting picture from the year, I think this was 2019. This from the year 1901. I've been tracking back that what is this photograph about, and you can see on the top of the picture it says en 2000. My French is not very good, and the photo is at school in the year 2000, so 20 years ago. But the postcard is made in the 1911. Help me. Is it so that was there when was the Paris World Fair? Was it 1911 or 1912? Where there was also the Finnish pavilion.
Wasn't it 1900?
1900. Okay,
yeah.
So this is a bit later.
Yeah.
But this is related to somehow. That's right. Yes, it was already 1900. But this is 1911, and there's a series of postcards which been, I think it promoted some fair in Paris as well. But the artists were giving a task that imagine the future in the year 2000. And this is a school, what the artist was imagining the school will be alike. So now you can see there's the professor feeding machine with books. So then the information goes from the books to the heads of the students. Books are no more so valuable that you can use this way too, or well, of course, I don't know how the machine works. Is it destroying them? But anyhow, the point is that the information goes from the machine directly to the heads of the students. So they don't need to type things down or make a copy. They will learn all the information in there. I think this is an interesting picture because there's a certain paradigm we often see still in teaching and learning in our days. So if we go back to the lecturing example of the monasteries, and you as an architect knows that I don't really know how the monasteries were, how the classrooms in there were, but this auditorium idea that your voice is heard to the every spot because you don't want to lose a single word from the teacher's teaching is super important. This is kind of like with few hundred years afterwards and the possibility of everybody to read the book themselves, we replicate the same tradition, me talking here and you writing down. And luckily, and hopefully you are not aiming and trying to write every word I'm saying. That would be silly, of course. But my attempt in here now is quite different than the priest in a monastery. But for hundreds of years, and partly because of the price of the books and the limitation of access to books, this being the mode of teaching without the machine. So the teacher is teaching and the student's job is to try to remember as much as possible from those words. But now the teacher in this vision for the year 2000 is no more using spoken word. Directly from the book, the information goes to the heads of the students. Okay, so I'll show you two more pictures of learning environments kind of from the different era. And also how, like my point is that these traditions are super sticky. They go on for centuries. So this is from the 1957. Skinner, world famous psychologist, used to work in MIT in the United States, came up with this great discovery of behaviorism, as it is called today, that the most living things works in a pretty simple way of reward or punishment. So the classical stick or carrot idea. And he did his studies with rats and realized that when he's giving a reward for a rat, the rat behaves in a certain way. And he was convinced that all living creatures work in a similar way, and the learning happens only by stick and carrot. So he moved quite fast from the rats to children, as it happens with psychologists. He designed this kind of teaching machine and call it programmed learning. So now the machine, it's a mechanical machine, but practically it's this that it's show you questions and you answer right or wrong, and then you can progress when you answer right. So the reward is that you go forward with the machine. So very similar than computer games, where we are playing game and then we need to go to the next level. We need to do a certain task. If we don't succeed, we don't progress. And he was convinced that with this kind of teaching machines, we can scale up teaching. We don't necessarily need teachers at all, because we will have this teaching machine with different kind of materials, and people by answering questions and reading from there, or reading from there, learning from there, making progress by answering right, and not progressing if you make a mistake, we can scale high quality learning. Not necessarily like that. Skinner didn't probably vision in a societal scale of these things, but you get the idea. A machine which is able to teach, and that is just like a drill and practice exercises. I really like that there's a little key in the side of the machine. So that must have been something which is the something kept secretly in the school, so the kids don't get to check the right answers beforehand. And this is, of course, like in the 1950s, 1960s, all the cybernetics idea. You might have heard about that. All these new understanding of the human behavior, certain positivist ideas that the humans are like animals, that they just react to the environment and you can control them by designing the environment so that it will give you rewards or it will punish you depending on the situation where you want to direct the humans. So very much in line with that, and also the whole ideas of modernist control thing, where we get the data and we process and we can do exact the right decisions in the society. Somehow, when reading about the cybernetics and these ideals, which then of course was took in extreme, for instance, in Soviet Union, I'm sensing very similar zeitgeist today. We collect a lot of data and we think that through the data we get so good understanding and that will direct things to the better world. I'm skeptical about it, but I often when reading about this 1950s, 1960s cybernetics ideas, I get this feeling that is there like another attempt because it didn't work out in Soviet Union very well, that are we getting a second chance to try it out? Okay, another picture, and as I mentioned, Soviet Union. This is from the 1985. And this is from Soviet Union, a computer classroom in the Chaklovsky Village School number 2. In Soviet Union, all the schools were numbered because this ideal that you can quantify everything and then you can control. Managing the school is easier if they just have numbers, of course. You know exactly what you are talking when you talk about the school number 2. So also computers came to Soviet Union, and I really like the slogan on the top of the in there, which is in Russia. In there, I checked the translation, or I asked my Estonian professor who speaks Russian or colleague to translate that, and it says in there, programming is the second literacy. The first one gives you knowledge, the second allows you to implement it in practice. It's interesting that these are not school students who are there. They are a bit elder citizens, but also in Soviet Union it was seen that the computers are super important for the future, and also not only maybe in 1980s that it should be a machine for controlling the people, but also there's a lot of possibilities of people having access to these machines and doing things. The slogan itself is quite interesting if you think about it for a while, that the first literacy, you read the classical Russian novels, that is the first knowledge. And the second one is that you can implement it in practice. So almost like that, and I get back to this cybernetics ideas that if you describe a society or utopia where you know exactly where and what materials are produced and made, you can have this super efficient society. So you can describe it and then you program it. But then we need to think about the first literacy very carefully. what is the vision or the utopia we are looking for? Because if we are able to describe it, like in science fiction, some people will be able to program it. Let's move to the topic, or I don't know, I guess I'm talking about the same topic all the time, about this teaching and learning and thinking about ideas more about teaching and learning. I really, because I'm not an architect or interior architect, I don't want to say too much about that. That's your expertise, but maybe some thoughts which may help you to think when you are designing spaces and places for teaching and learning. As Pirjo mentioned, I got a book out this year. The book is called Hyvän oppimisen tilat. The direct translation to English would be like a good spaces or good. The tila is interesting word in Finnish. It practically means a space, but it is also a moment, tilanne, or situation. And I like to play, or with the title we play a bit with the words. So when you say in Finnish hyvän oppiminen, it might be that it's a good learning, or it's learning good. So something like a virtues, or learning something valuable or useful. And then the word tila contains the meaning of situation or moment, tilanne. The book itself goes through a bit of the history of contemporary thought of what is considered to be valuable in teaching and learning. It builds from history by showing that the ideas of teaching and learning are reflecting the zeitgeist of the time, and they all the ideas how teaching and learning should be organized are reflecting the time, but also trying to contribute to the time. So often there's again certain visions or hypotheses how the world should be. So we change the educational system or the education to make it happen. So same time as it's representing the culture, like the lecturing idea, it has this idea, especially from the 1960s, that it may change the world. So if we do things differently in the education, the future generation will do something which will be for good or bad. And I, as a boomer, come from the era when Finnish educational system was, in a way, pretty standardized, but on the other hand, giving a lot of freedom for teachers to do the things their own way. But from the history of Finnish education, you can find all these fights that, is this education now lefties, or is it promoting business, or is it humanities, or is it sciences and as a mean to productivity and economy and industry, or is it more looking for well-being and good life for all? So you can read those from the history of Finnish education. For instance, the basic education, which was introduced in the early 1970s, finally I think implemented in 1976, was a huge political debate that should we have this compulsory school where everybody would study, for instance, foreign languages. And the arguments were, of course, that some people were claiming that all children will never have the capacity to learn foreign languages. You could at least make an interpretation that same time those people were hoping to maintain classical class structure in Finland, that there's people who are, by their family history, they belong to the working class, and then there's people who are educated, and they are on top of these other people. So by claiming that everybody will never, or that's impossible for everybody to learn mathematics in a certain level, over a certain level, or everybody learning foreign languages, was also part of the political debate of how the society should be, how it should be organized. Well, the compulsory school people won the fight in that time, and then it was established with this idea that everybody goes to school and have a chance to study all the subjects we teach today in school, and we'll have a pathway all the way to the university and continuing their studies. We go through these different pedagogical ideas and how they are linked to the society and ideas of power and societal life, how they are connected, and how certain progressive or even radical thoughts of teaching and learning being slowly getting to the mainstream. We still fight about the topic that is the Finnish educational system too loose? Does it give too much responsibility for children themselves to develop themselves? Shouldn't it be better that we control them and we give certain information that they had, and then they behave in a certain way? However, this debate continues all the time around the curriculum and the planning of education. So that's one topic of the book. Then we go to also talk a bit of the current discussion where for instance, the education is considered that it shouldn't happen only in the school. It should happen in the forest. It should be happen in a city square. It should go to the museums. The school should open up to the rest of the society. And then we talk about the importance of art and humanities, that how those are the basis of a good life, in a way that you learn to appreciate beauty and see the beauty in the world, and how the art education, including the music, is what we are living for, almost. Like the turning backwards a bit of this idea that the school should prepare people to economy or to be productive citizens, but rather they should be well-being with possibility to participate and live good life. In that way, it is almost like a pamphlet of rethinking why do we do schooling? What is the real reason behind it? Should the benefit be the economy or the people themselves? So, but now I will jump to the year 2004 and try to reflect from basis of that book a bit of other topics, or well, not really other topics, but about ideas and thoughts behind the teaching and learning. Year 2004, I wrote an article to 2004, so almost 20 years ago, long time ago. In that time, there was a big trend of e-learning. Everybody was talking that all the teaching and learning will happen online, and the world best professors will post their lectures online, and then all we will be watching them, and that's the way how we will gain great learning. And I wrote this a bit of like a critical point that when people talk about e-learning, do they really understand what is learning deeply? And that is a big question. And that is, of course, I mentioned the Skinner's behaviorism as one way of thinking about learning. You punish or you reward, and then that is guiding people's behavior. that is of course true. That is how we can teach many things for people by very simple loops where you give a reward and then that will make people do certain things. But it seems to be that the learning is much more complicated. I really like this picture, which is, now I should check by whom. I will send you the references later. So we can think about individual, which has a certain features. We can define that like the individual, all the individuals are of course different, but they are part of certain microsystem. Like this is something you can say that is the in every culture, in every human communities. So often in a modern society, you can see that we are all members of the certain family. We have certain peers, our friends, people we hang out and spend time. And then inside the microsystem in a modern society, there is like this is from the United States. So there's the church, there's the school, there's the health services. So kind of like a spiritual, intellectual, and then in a Western medical science, taking care of your body and maybe a bit of your mind. And then there's a mesosystem which is between those, when we go further. And there's, of course, there's the industry, there's the mass media, local politics, neighborhoods, social services, and so on. And finally, there's the microsystems, which is attitudes and ideologies of the culture we are living in. And those are affecting to the exosystem, to the microsystem, and finally to the individuals. So the ideas are made in these microsystem. Of course, the individuals are affecting on them and the whole thing. But then that is putting pressure to all the mesosystem, through the mesosystem to the microsystem, which has the most influence on us. And of course, this is something which is interactive both ways. Can't say which is leading whom, or what is the direction of causality in a way. But in different times, these are organized in a different ways. But the microsystem is affecting all those in the middle. And as I mentioned, the 1970s changes in the Finnish educational system, there were certain attitudes and ideologies which became more powerful in the society, and that was then changing many things in the microsystem and finally to the individuals as well. My kind of like a personal opinion is that if you look the political landscape today in Finland, and we think the Finnish educational system, it has failed. Like the microsystem of these ideas of strongly in the 1970s that like the principles of human rights, democracy, respect of others, no bullying, no harming others, was built into the school system, but the school system was not able to influence the individuals enough. So of course the microsystem is a battlefield of ideas and ideologies, and then somehow we failed in many ways if you look the current political landscape in Finland. That is my own point of view. On the other hand, for instance, what just happened in Poland, there was a peaceful elections and peaceful transition of the power for the opposition. So there it again worked out. So getting back to the question then more closely to the individual level and how learning happens. And I think we can, or this is, I have references for you too, if you want to have a look. This is by Paavola and Hakkarainen. They claim that our way of thinking about learning, it's dominated by mostly about two metaphors of learning. And they say it's a knowledge acquisition metaphor and participation metaphor. And they propose a third one called knowledge creation. Let's jump these through quickly, and I will get to the end points. So knowledge acquisition. You read a book, you learn, you consume information, and you are educated. From the cognitive science or human mind study point of view, learning is an individual cognitive process. You memorize things from the content you've been reaching or accusing or reading or writing or listening a lecture, and you process that, and then you are considered to be educated. Participation, very strong metaphor in teaching and learning. The idea is that it's a sociocultural process. People learn from each other. People learn in a cultural context where they are living at. So if the culture is fooling around, you end up to be a fool and fooling around. Very simple thing. We see this happening all the time in our daily life. And thirdly, what is then the third metaphor, and kind of like been coming up in the last 20 years, is this knowledge creation. And when we think about knowledge creation and we look for spaces now, for instance, in Aalto, this picture is actually from the design factory, the original one. And the idea of how people work is that they create something. And now we may think that what is the creation? And Hakkarainen and Paavola talks about artifacts. And now we need to think about the term artifact, that it's not necessarily a piece of art as we could consider that. It might be also conceptual artifact. It's a new understanding. It's something how I think about the topics I'm studying now. So getting back to your note-taking, you are now producing new knowledge. You do knowledge creation. And why it's new, it is new for you. My ideas are not new as such. I'm just delivering them, but I've been processing them through my creation of artifacts. And you are now, when you are taking notes and writing down, and hopefully drawing as well, you are producing your artifacts. And the sociocultural process is present. Unfortunately, we are not in the same classroom, so it's harder to have a proper conversation or dialogue, but still there's a sociocultural process now taking place in this very moment. We see that this is how kind of creative people be working for ages. We show our work for others, we get criticism, we share our designs or our plans with others, and we improve them during the process. And also in schools, if you think about all the group work or teamwork, which my students are already complaining about in the design program, it's all behind this idea of learning being a sociocultural process with intentions to produce artifacts. And then come the big question that this, by the way, from picture from one of my courses where we have this kind of fishbowl discussions going on. We've been studying certain topics independently, and then we come to the classroom to have a discussion about them. The empty chair is there that anyone from the ring may enter the empty chair, and then someone in the middle goes to the ring. And only those people in the center are allowed to talk. So you are only listening, or if you want to say something, you go to the center and join the conversation over there. And there's always only 3 people having a discussion. And so this is my way of teaching with this idea of learning be a sociocultural process where you produce artifacts. And as I say, the artifact should not be considered only physical artifact. It might be an idea, it might be a thought, it might be a concept, it might be your understanding of the things which you share in a sociocultural way. So you externalize that for others to comment and to discuss about. So nothing new again. This is a classical painting of the Socrates Academia, which was the original idea of the university. You see that people are there doing teamwork, and then they are walking around and having a conversation. Someone is writing down something. Maybe someone somewhere is also reading something. This is another example what I've been using. We made this kind of prototype of video conference system, which is applying the fishbowl discussion idea. There are chairs around and you sit in there. If you want to join, you click a button. I want to join the conversation, and then one of the 4 people in there will be thrown away and replaced with that one coming from the audience. So mentioning all this, that there's the acquisition of information, very classical way of learning, that you've been reading a lot, which I think is super, super important. Don't stop reading. Don't stop going to exhibitions. Don't consider that to be not valuable. There's the participation. You took part in a certain sociocultural environment and practices, and you learn in them. And then there's this knowledge creation idea. You do artifacts by yourself. And the interesting thing is that all these are important in a quality teaching and learning. You need to study, you need to be educated from the earlier generations' ideas, which are still most common documented in a format of a book. There are other media formats too, but you need to know what is already known. So very classical idea of us standing on the shoulders of the giants, knowing what is already known. And then we have a social cultural environment, like in our case, Aalto University, in your case, more precisely, the Department of Architecture, with the long history, long traditions, long ways of doing things. Respect them too. They are super valuable for your learning. But finally, and I know this is not an issue in art and design and architecture education, you should create artifacts. But they should work together now, that there's the knowledge acquisition, you know the history, you know the earlier things done, and you participate to the activities, and through the participation you have a chance to be a knowledge creator, something you contribute to the world. There's, by the way, the reference, the knowledge creation metaphor, an emergent epistemological approach to learning. Okay, I'm running out of time, and I'm just about getting to the future. Okay, this is my final thing. So I think it's fair to say that every generation and every time people think that we live some kind of special time, but regardless of that, I'm not saying that we live somehow very special time, but there's certain technological megatrends which are new and very important, or kind of affecting to our life. There's the internet-based networks. Most of the time it works. There's a growing computing capacity, and then there's automation and robotics. And as I say, that affects, or this technology development, or the society able to invent new technologies, has an effect to teaching and learning. So there's certain learning megatrends which you may consider also with your design of educational spaces or schools or whatever you do, which is partly affected by the technology megatrends. There's the formal and informal learning, questions about it, again, the social environments, do we need them, how they should be? And then thirdly, there's the big idea of processing information we can gather. I think Esa was saying that put your real name so we get the participant list. That is a simple way of doing analytics through the computer. And then there comes the question of regulation and self-regulation precisely, which is a big, its own area of research, is the self-regulated learning. Very briefly, formal and informal learning. And I want to point out this is my last thing. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with the concept of non-formal and informal learning, but simplifying the thing is that you can think about the context. Now we are in a formal learning situation. I'm not sure if you get grades from this, but anyway, you are part of the university institution. Then there's the non-formal, which happens through your employer is saying that you should take some training, or you go to gallery or library or archives or museums. That's where the CLAM comes. So all the memory institutions, you go there non-formally to study and to see what it is. NGOs, you participate to the Red Cross or Amnesty International, and non-formal learning happens. And then there's the huge pile of informal learning. If you've been present today during this lecture, you'll be more in the area of formal. But I can't be sure if you've been spending more time on watching YouTube videos in there. So you've been on the informal learning side. Then we can look for the power and control, which is always something you should consider. It's good to ask in education always, who is teaching whom, about what, and why. So power and control. You will get a certificate which will make you possible to practice your profession as an architect. Anybody else can't do that. So there's a power and control which is given by the curriculum and the degree. You can say the non-formal is pseudo-voluntary. You go and participate to the Red Cross or you don't. Depends on your. On the other hand, if your parents tell you that, hey, you should go and play football, how voluntary it is. But the informal is totally voluntary. And the question or not comes to the algorithms. So if you watch YouTube videos, it starts to feed you certain information. So again, the technology is affecting to that. In a way, when you went to the library to pick up books by yourself, that's voluntary, but someone made a decision what kind of books they are. So it's not totally voluntary even, or what do you pick up? And finally, the regulation. So as I mentioned, you as an architect will have a license to practice the profession because you took this curriculum and did this degree in this great institution of Aalto University. So you get a position. Then there's the non-formal side, and there the regulation is more the sociocultural context. Your parents are educated and they will guide you to do certain things. Or your workplace is a great workplace and says that, hey, now you have a chance to study these topics by yourself. And then comes the informal side. And this is, I think, is super, super important today. The only regulation is self-regulation. Now, you might have been regulating yourself and taking notes and writing down things and paying attention to my words, or you made a different decision and were watching YouTube videos. So this is a total new or like a skill which we need to pay attention more and more in education. And my way of thinking is that we have more responsibility in the formal side to guide people to the side of the non-formal and informal learning. So letting them to be educated enough that they see the value of the non-formal education, which is a pseudo-voluntary. You need to hang out with people who want to study certain topics. And then finally, in the informal side, you are so strong that instead of only spending your time on stupid things, you try to learn meaningful things. And that's where I could end my talk, that when we design education and the buildings and the spaces, we should pay attention that they will support the student to become super great self-regulated learners who are controlling their own time and space and understanding the value of that.
Thank you, Teemu. Teemu, I did draw. I will send you this.
Wow, thank you, Pirjo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I've been doing this now with several courses or several lectures, and I really like when people draw and make notes.
So do you have some like comments or advice in space design? So
yeah,
how do we foster this kind of informal learning? And
yeah, that is a good question. I would like to say that for instance, like we talk a lot of this, that you should have a quiet places to be alone. Or like, I've been thinking, and this might be totally wrong, but I think the teacher who is there responsible of helping them should have a control what the kids are doing with their devices, either picking them off totally, but have access to those. So if I'm saying that the auditorium is a great for theater play, but not necessary for teaching and learning today, because we are not doing lecturing anymore. On the other hand, there should be quiet spaces for people to concentrate, to reading books or even reading from the tablet. But then I think the teacher should have some kind of like a ability to control that. Or I don't like the word control, but guiding the students to do things. So in a way, if there's a hiding places, which would be great, maybe they should be somehow open, or it's a hiding space where you can go with the book. I don't know. This is a silly idea. Another thing which just from the space design, very precisely about the space design, I've been a bit of like the school desk idea, feeling that that's really stupid. And in many ways, it's controlling people. It will put them on a place that they will stay there, and then it's easy to teach because everybody is sitting behind a table. But on the other hand, often the table is your own safe space. In the best schools, you can open up the desk, and you can have the pictures of your family or pets or something in there, and that's your private space. So somehow the need of private space increases the psychological ownership, and what we need for quality teaching and learning being safe. And psychological safe comes when you have a feeling of this being my space. Those comes into my mind.